communication classes. Hailing from Croatia, he has worked on large institutional projects at Sasaki Associates in Massachusetts and a Venice biennial installation. He has taught comprehensive design for Roger Williams College and the Boston Architectural Center. Next, we have Ryan Alshama, president of the University of Oregon chapter of the American Institute of Architects Students. He is the regional director of AIS also, and he chaired the 2016 AIS West Quad Conference in Portland and has worked for architecture and planning firms in Singapore, Shanghai, and Eugene, as well as HOK in London. Nancy Chang is Department of Architecture head and associate professor at the University of Oregon. She researches how tools and approaches shape the design process. She has headed the National American Institute of Architecture's Technology and Architectural Practice Group, the Association of Computer-Aided Design in Architecture, and has led virtual design studios as a lecturer at the University of Hong Kong. Thank you very much, and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ben and Jim, for the introduction, and Craig and AIA Oregon for bringing us all together, and offer this opportunity to share our experiences and kind of bring us together as a community in this very unusual, peculiar times. So I will say a few words of how we organized as faculty at the University of Oregon to best support, well, ourselves, but also students, right? I will share my experience teaching at the Boston Architectural College, focusing mostly on asynchronous communication and knowledge exchange. I lived in Boston before moving to Eugene, where I taught at the BAC, and I continued to do so after moving here, but this time at the online master program. So I think somehow this transition might have been a little bit easier for me. So that together should take around 5 minutes of our time. Mostly, I will present how we transitioned to the remote studio teaching format at the University of Oregon. I will enter a little bit into details of how we set up the studios, how does the workflow work, and what tools we are using in this process. And that in total, it should be around 10 to 12 minutes presentation. I will not bore you to that, I hope. So basically, if we start with how I would start, so in this extraordinary situations, we had only 2 weeks to quickly equip faculty with tools and knowledge for transitioning online. The university swiftly organized massive trainings, right? But architecture education, as we know, is quite peculiar compared to most of other programs across the university. So, well, those trainings were great, right? They were covering a lot of important tools and techniques. They were not tackling how to run studios and how to run media classes. So that left a lot of anxiety among faculty around the whole situation, right? So the faculty faced 2 main challenges. One was isolation that I think we all experience, and switching to a remote teaching format that would be tough by itself, right? Even if we were all on campus, but it was quite unsettling feeling, the feeling of facing digital platforms, delivering classes online that most never did before, and having nobody around, right? Around just to ask, quick basic questions. So the first step that we thought as a department was to create a weekly check-in sessions that were exclusively dedicated to training faculty. That soon became not just those kind of training sessions, but kind of a broad participatory platform where many were contributing with content, particularly as the weeks of the first and second week of teaching went by. So basically, sharing was so successful because we started to collectively build knowledge within the department, and that also lifted the spirits. So we kind of felt, oh, we are not here anymore alone. We are doing this as a community. We're going through this together. And we started to believe that actually this can work. So it was beneficial in many ways. Within a couple of weeks, we were already collectively making up our minds about things that we feel now it's very basic, but what video platforms to use. Then Zoom emerged to be superior in terms of video and audio quality, proven to also work greatly with desk grids, live desk grids, to share screen along with annotations tools that the Zoom platform also offer to go over students' drawings. And I will talk a little bit also about the whiteboard options. So 3 platforms emerged: the Freehands, InVision, Miro, that are all apps that can be easily linked to Microsoft Teams, a platform that the university officially endorsed, and the concept board that Nancy will kind of touch a little bit later. So this was all happening behind the scenes, where students might not have even realized the quantity and the extent of work that faculty did to, in 2 weeks to make this whole spring term happen. So yeah, so that was a big effort. At the BAC, my experience with the BAC was that students that I work with are a little bit of a different profile, right? So than the University of Oregon students, they are used to online teaching, and the BAC has a well-known, robust, accredited program with quite a long tradition, right, for an online format. So I think that it was in 2005, I believe, that NAAB accredited it, and it became the first accredited distance program in the country. So the student body is quite different. And that means also different expectations, right? So almost everyone has daily jobs. So a lot of communication between instructors and students rely on asynchronous methods. That means that communication is not live, right? We are relying on a lot of pre-recorded lectures, videos, readings that can be done at any time within a certain time framework, and red marking as feedback, right? Very similar. I worked also at Sasaki with offices in the UK and in Mexico, and basically this whole endeavor really reminds me of how we worked with sharing knowledge and sharing drawings and red marking and collaborating together overseas. So at the BSc, the live calls and this live kind of synchronous kind of communication was much more pointy and scheduled ad hoc, right? With the University of Oregon, students and faculty are mostly relying on live communication. So this synchronous communication, we are basically delivering delivering online and on campus format, right? It's the same format that is going through the screen, and somehow it's keeping the same logic of a residency program. However, I think that we are a little bit missing the opportunity of this remote format. And I think I had a lot of conversation with Nancy, and I think we both share the thought that if we fully rely on kind of live and we just bring the on-site version through the screen, we are missing the opportunity of time flexibility, right? That an online format means. So it doesn't mean that we need. So for instance, I'm spending 23 to 24 hours to 25 hours a week on focused Zoom calls, right? So it's exhausting, right? So we're trying to make an effort in spreading the understanding that the full potential of a remote format is time flexibility. Not everything has to go live, right? It's great for establishing, I don't know, the community to keep that kind of personal connection through the screen. But it's sometimes I think it can become very very exhausted. So having a good balance between both approaches, synchronous and asynchronous, would be key. And I will demonstrate now how I'm doing it in my design studios and digital media classes. So I will just share the screen with everyone. Okay, here. A second. Okay, so basically, what I do, and most of my colleagues, so we use Microsoft Teams as the mother platform. This term I teach a course studio, and that is coordinated. So basically, every instructor has their own channel as a studio space, let's call it this way, aside from the one that we all share together. So that one we used to coordinate among ourselves. Within my sections, we're basically using a tree structure for folders, and Microsoft Teams really allows it very well for that, to keep things organized. I'm working in small group desk grids rather than individual ones as a strategy to force students to bond and to see each other's work and to break the insularity, somehow to build a studio culture that is kind of being challenging at this time. So we, to organize those desk grids, we use live Excel sheets to sign up for the crit. So there is an order. And again, the Teams as this kind of main platform is really great because it supports live documents from spreadsheets, PowerPoints, Word documents, and we can all collaborate simultaneously on them. So students can, for instance, sign up live, and it's live. So in case there's someone who has a more urgent issue, they can discuss, they can swap the times, etc. So the live component is very helpful here. We rely for live communication, we exclusively rely on Zoom calls, where students can share the screen. I'm projecting here a snapshot of the screen where we can sketch over using Zoom annotation tools. We can discuss the work live. Students from the whole group can listen in. So again, I'm trying to keep those calls open. So whoever is interested to listening in can do that. So Zoom also can easily save the screenshots, and we are bringing them back into a live PowerPoint document. So what does that mean? So basically, again, Microsoft Teams has an option of embedded option of having live PowerPoints. So, and this is really a great way to for asynchronous communication. So I'm here projecting a screen where we can see, I don't know, red marking, we can leave comments on the drawings, or we can leave comments also as a separate chat thread on the side that you can see on the right side of the screen. And this document basically became the main repository of all the work across the term. Slideshows also allow us to follow the history of the project, and you can see on the left side, you can scroll up and down. You're able to backtrack and understand if the project kept the main design intent and goals that were set at the beginning, or at some point it went off the rail, or how it changed, what happened, etc. So I think it's really this format is really kind of great as a learning tool. We can detect the points of inflection in the process, the key moments of a breakthrough, right, for students. So in a way, I think that students really appreciate that and see a big benefit in that, because yeah, we can really dissect and analyze a design process mostly as a linear kind of, in a linear way, right? The design is not a linear process, but we analyze it, let's say, in as a history of the project. In addition to annotating live on Zoom or asynchronously red marking the PowerPoint presentations, what we are using is also the whiteboard. And this is an example from my media class. So the whiteboard is a limitless white space that can be used as a pinup space. You can swiftly zoom in and zoom out in the screen, changing the level of detail, something that cannot be done that easily in a PowerPoint, right? So basically, we can share here website links for precedents, copy paste images from I don't know, our desktop, and very quickly. The whiteboard tools also have are pretty basic, right? But the annotation tools are definitely serving the purpose. So what I mean, you can see here also on the upper right corner who is in the document. If we have a live workshop session, by the color of the red marks, you can see who left a specific comment or mark or trace on the drawing. So it's a very dynamic and collaborative tool. The other cool feature is that you can share a link to external participants who don't have to be part of a Microsoft team, so they can also review the work or join for working sessions, even without being kind of, I don't know, sharing that Microsoft team. Again, after using the whiteboard, we again take the screenshots and bring them back into that slideshow, so we keep a record of the project in one place. So we can again see how the project evolved. We have written record of what we talked about. And here, for instance, you can see on the right side, other students leaving comments on David's project, or me leaving a lengthy comment here to complement the screenshots from the Zoom in this case. You can see the Zoom annotation tools. So I also, talking about the kind of the slideshow as a format that is maybe less common in an on-site format, studio format, I actually see it as a good opportunity for students to understand how public presentation, or not only public presentations, but general presentations to client, to stakeholders, to the community work in practice, right? So outside of school, we barely use large format boards to present. It mostly happens through a slideshow. So there is a whole set of skills that students are now specifically during this time building and gaining that will be very helpful once they get out of school. They learn how to build narratives in a more linear way and how to lead the viewers through the project. So I think that's that would be one of the main, I think, takeaways of this different format. Another one that that I also see is an opportunity to push digital literacy within students, right? So learning how to create blogs, websites, etc. And these are becoming quite necessary skills, right, to compete in today's markets. So for instance, I'm showing here we are using blogs for virtual galleries. Here is within our coordinated studio, Dr. Rockcastle's section. So it's really a great way to quickly browse through work across different studios, and again keep kind of a feeling of we know who and what studio is developing what. Good for us as instructors and also for students. So also here, we are now in conversations of how to organize our mid reviews and later the final reviews. This online format is opening doors to the whole world, right? It's something that we didn't have before, where we can invite our peers and colleagues from universities overseas, right, to participate. And okay, I think I will stop sharing my screen here. Okay. Yeah, so basically, well, this is quite an unfortunate situation. We're trying to find benefits to that remote format that got imposed to us. The whole endeavor, again, is opening many doors and is teaching us lessons about how to build community among faculty, how to build community among students, as well as how to streamline the studio workflow with students using digital platforms. And those lessons, for sure, they will be useful, and I will be applying them when we return to our to normalcy and the residency format. And again, yeah, I believe that this unfortunate situation can be also seen as ways to learn and improve processes, even when we return. Even when we return to the residency format. And I have here a question, and it's coming right at the same at the good moment. So basically, the annotation tools. One second. Let me open the presentation here. The annotation tools pops out when you're sharing the screen in Zoom. I will share the screen now. Okay, share. Where I can start sketching over, red marking, entering, seeing the section. I can write text or even bring. Are you able to see those annotations? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks. I'll leave comments, etc. So yeah, so those features are yeah. So I allow my students to be able to see everyone's presentations, so they can also leave a trace on them and kind of keep more engaged. Again, there is a very simple command here where you can save the screenshot and easily send by email, or I'm again putting them back into the slideshow, and I will stop sharing. So yeah, the idea was to kind of try to keep all those platforms as open as I can to the whole group, and so they can also learn from each other. Another thing that that we notice is that, for instance, students in my sections were using a specific set of tools that I'm familiar with. Students in different sections or with different teachers used different ones. So we encouraged also students who are technologically sometimes more savvy than us to be those kind of carriers of knowledge and information, right? So I think that also, so somehow that whole kind of knowledge sharing and building the knowledge community exploded. And within 2 weeks, we were all brought up to speed with those tools. Mm-hmm. Rex, I don't know if I was able to, to respond to your question. Was that what you were asking? And if you need to talk, you need to unmute the call. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Sure. And if there are, if we can hold on with other questions, and I can let the mic to Ryan, unless there is another, there are more questions. No. Ryan, do you want to take over?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Geraldine. Hi, everybody. Thank you again for your time. So I represent the American Institute of Architecture students at the University of Oregon. What we do in Eugene is we try to fill the gaps for students in their educations. We kind of act as like a student government to supplement students' educations with like professional networking opportunities, social opportunities, workshops, pretty much anything that they want. And I've actually had the opportunity to work with many of you in the past in doing so. Basically, when this whole pandemic hit, we were also kind of feeling anxiety. I'm sure all the students were feeling anxious about what was going to happen. Everyone was a bit unsure as to how studio would work. And so just from kind of like surveying each other and the people we talked to, the big things that we identified were going to be problems were the loss of community. Students were worried about not seeing each other and kind of missing out on the experience of being in Lawrence Hall because there's a very like rich studio culture there. That and yeah, the studio experience. I mean, everyone was unsure as to how remote studio would work out. It seemed pretty alien to most of us. And so we were all very skeptical. And so we took to the drawing board and started trying to figure out how we can accommodate students and to kind of work with the department to alleviate some of the work that they have to do. And so for ourselves, I mean, those are the problems identified for students, but for ourselves, we kind of also that it might hit our membership numbers next year, especially since we've been working so hard over the past few years to get student engagement up and trying to get students to pay for membership so that we can open them up to more opportunities in the future. That and delivering programming to students we weren't sure how that was going to work. But we found actually in working through this that tech actually opened up a lot of opportunities for us. So it's not really a bad thing that we're not with each other right now and not delivering programming directly. And so the way that we decided to tackle this problem is by launching a website. So I'm gonna share my screen. So website and increasing our social media presence was the big thing. And we kind of thought that this would work because, I mean, students are like bombarded with emails every day. And have for our emails as professionals do. I really hate checking my email for one. And so what we wanted to do was reduce the amount of emails that we were getting and the amount of sources of information. And we just wanted to give students one place where they could find everything. And so our website basically allowed us to start posting literally everything we're doing whenever. allowed students to join our meetings, allowed them to not grieve, but complain. If they have any like anonymous tips that they want to give, like you're welcome to. It just allowed students to stay in touch with us while remote. We are starting up a shop too, which is going to be pretty cool. Oh, what's up? Okay. Yeah, so that was our one big thing that we started. The second was we started ramping up our social media postings and trying to exploit the Instagram's algorithm so that we can be seen more by posting more. And so we started launching online specific events. So literally just yesterday, actually 24 hours ago, it might still be on our story, we had a young architects panel with architects from GMA, which was extremely successful. We've been launching a number of competitions just so that students will stay engaged with us and feel like they have still an opportunity to have control over their over what other students are seeing and to put their work out there. So we just actually wrapped up an architectural showcase competition, which is going to allow students to win up to $500 per piece that they put on display. We are also just launching a sticker competition. We're hosting virtual elections, putting out memes. We are still working on our Freedom by Design community service projects. So all this stuff is still going on. The only thing that's changed is how we're putting it out there. But from what we've experienced, it actually has not been a bad thing. We're still working. We're now starting to implement weekly features where we realized that students didn't feel like even though all this stuff is going on, they didn't feel like they were being seen or didn't have the opportunity to share. And so now we're starting to implement features. We're implementing spotlights and kind of like show us your workstation type thing, you know, where they can share with us like what their quarantine meal looks like or like what their quarantine studio setup looks like, so that we can all kind of feel like we're still there even though we're all apart. So yeah, that's definitely social media and the website and centralizing information has been our really what has solved this for us. And I think we're just gonna continue to push through it. And I mean, if anyone else is struggling with how to stay in touch, I highly suggest social media. And yeah, if you have a website, just update it.
That's great. Any questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan. I'm always jealous of how he's able to get so many people to come to his events. He's really successful at this. So you guys can hear me okay? All right, thank you. So I'm glad you're still awake too. I'm gonna try to share my screen. So my idea is that I'll go through a bunch of different kind of social media things that I've been using, and then I'll take you through one class. So, you know, one of the things that I really have liked to do is do some sharing of links and things. So I use something called Digo. It's a way that I can just acquire these different, I know it doesn't have the pictures. I haven't figured that out. I've been using it for so long. But basically what I'm doing is putting anything that I find that is of interest, and then I can make these little outlines that I can share with students. And then what I can do is, let me see if I can get this to work. Click on it, and then you can have the students see how you are organizing information. So as you know, both Ryan and Geraldine were explaining, what we're trying to do is find ways that get people interested in bringing together the community. And so I've been really happy that Geraldine has been able to do this. Sorry, I'm interested, it's not coming up. So one of the things we can do is we can have people share their, okay, shut up now, okay, you can shut up. I guess I better close that one while it's using it's this kind of interesting kinetic sculpture thing that I really love. So, okay. So these are done by students, and we can just embed these into the class course website. So we have a number of these kinds of things. This is a course blog that I have. And it just was a way that you could have it pretty vital for people to encourage them to participate. So let me just see what, oh, that's something coming up pretty soon. That's our health thing. So in terms of the first year, I'm coordinating first year, and we just have a boatload of students. This is Concept Board, and it allows you to have folders for each of your projects or clients. And then within the folders, here are the different sections. So we have 8 sections. I'm coordinating and kind of steering the ship and not doing the hands-on. I think you got a sense of how it works with Geraldine. In this case, one thing that many of these things have is that you can steer to different examples within the flat board. So this is really handy. You can zoom out by just steering, and it's just really helpful to be able to move from one pane to another. So we like the 2-dimensional steering better than the 3D because it's hard to get lost. So that's super great. Let me just see, where am I? Oh, I just wanted to show you, to give you a little more of a sense of where this is coming from. There was something that was called Prezi that I used a long time ago. This was a really early one in this space. Let's see. And so what this is it's a big, you just throw down your ideas on the surface, and then it basically just walks you through. So somewhere down here, which I can't, I have to push this up here, then I should be able to just have it walk through. And then it basically steers through these different parts of this presentation. And I wanted to show you that because something that I've been working on for a long time is this idea of how do we make the campus open up and include the whole world. And so that's the real advantage that I see of what we can do with this remote collaboration. Let me go to, I'm going to steer really quickly through this presentation in order to get you some context for why I have these principles about what are some lessons learned. So this is something that I've shared with some people at the AIA on the coast. What I've been doing is, those were the tools. The University of Oregon and Oregon State has a partnership called the Tallwood Design Institute. There's a lot of applied research with structural testing, a new robotics construction facility, and then all these different kinds of research. So I'm working together with my colleague Judith Shine, who's leading this, and we have a course that's within this, and we're starting a new MS. If you're interested in mass timber design, we have new continuing professional ed courses as well that you can get to in Portland. The course I'm teaching, I need to just shrink all you guys, even though you look good. I want to make you smaller here. I guess this one. Oh, then I get to see me. That's not very interesting. Okay, here. I'll put it over my partner, Maria Palariggio is my partner at Oregon State. I'm showing you this just so you can understand what the context of my previous collaboration work is. So I taught at University of Hong Kong, did a lot of international global, we call it global virtual design studios. It's like, hello, we were so happy when we could connect over the internet. And so I've been using these tools to enrich what's happening at Oregon. And this one, we're connecting engineering students and wood science students and those in construction management. The idea is to expose them to the ways that digital workflow is bringing together aesthetic expression, structural efficiency, material appropriateness, and then these connections and assemblies, really changing the workflow. And to get people started, there is something about face-to-face to kick off a relationship, to build that trust. It is great to actually be in the same room, breathe the same space, be able to use the nonverbals. And I think everybody's missing that. We also asked them to interview each other. And then we use the blog and these reflective portfolios, thinking about what are their goals, how they're own experiments as well as the things they saw applied to those learning goals. Just to give you an idea, we had a mix of these different kinds of students. This is a diagram from one of them. 3 different students, one an engineer, one an architect, and one wood science person. Each one has a specialty of the software, and then they all came up with a design. So in this case, one of our top design students, Zach Sherrod, was leading this, looking at how to make this leaf-like kind of design, and then making the flexible kind of parametric design where you could make many variations, so you can kind of get a sense of that. And what worked out great was to take it out of the architect's tool. We were teaching them structural analysis in the architect's tool, but the most successful ones took it out and put it into the structural engineers tools. And so here you see their construction. This is a lot my partner working with them about the way it comes together, the sequencing of how those and how the joints learn. So let's think about, what did we learn from all this? I'd like to talk about, for this, how teams work. I was really shocked when I was teaching co-housing studios. We had this consultant who like works with co-housing, that's intentional communities, when they've gone bad. And I was shocked because she basically said, you know, you have the slackers, and I thought she was going to say, and all these good people who do all the good work. No, she said, and the righteous, those obnoxious people who just think they're better than you. I'm like, oh, that's me, you know. And so what she was saying that I thought was really great was that it's like every marriage works in different ways, and it's okay. She said that in her own community, there's some people who actually do not put in the same number of hours, and I was like shocked. But she said that different people contribute in different ways, and that's like the success to a great marriage and a great community, that you understand that it doesn't have to be quid pro quo. And specifically, I was saying, you know, finding these partners who love to do what you hate to do, that is your dream partner. And, you know, you try to find the smartest people, that's the best. So what you're trying to do is bring together people with different perspectives and make sure that their eyes on the prize, that they have one clear objective that everybody shares. It's really great to realize that people come from different kinds of backgrounds. They have different domain expertise, different skills. And then what you're trying to do is find a way to work. And so a lot of this is negotiated, learning about each other's, you know, talents. And I like to say, time, task, or territory. Just make sure that everybody's clear. What is their role? What is their task? So you can pass the baton. It's like everybody, one person can take it on the whole thing and just pass the whole thing. Or you can say, okay, you're the engineer, think analytically. You're the wood person, think about the materials. I'll work on the design, and we'll sequence it this way. Or territory, like with the co-housing, what they would do is do the site plan together. Building A is this person, building B is this person, building C is that person. And often in agile programming, what you do is you have somebody who does the big picture and make sure that every piece is going to fit together. So a lot of this takes this kind of training, negotiation, work management planning. It's not always easy. Oopsie, missed one. And then in terms of technology, it's really key to keep it simple. To start with, use the tools that feel the most natural and gradually add more things. And so we're discovering together, Geraldine's Thursday sessions have been a great bonding thing for the faculty. We usually would not get together and have people admit, I have a question. That's the last thing that faculty want to do. All faculty is like, I'm the expert, I'm the expert. But in these sessions, it's been really great because people actually humble themselves and say, how do you do this? And it's really, really helpful. So I like to say, we used to call the class WebEx hell sometimes just because it didn't always work. But the key thing is to get this audio thing to work. Okay. And then one thing that I learned at this leadership training that I think is just amazing is that when things screw up, you can use this matrix to help you. So you think, oh, what's wrong with that person? They're just lazy or something. No, you look at it, the top row is like the individual. Do they care? Are they interested in making this happen? Maybe they do care, but they can't do it, that they're not strong enough or they don't have the background. The other things is the social thing is that if they think that it's not going to be acceptable to do it, forget it. You know, that's why this whole thing of being in studio is so helpful, because you're surrounded by people who say, yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it. And then this ability thing, you know, do you have a team that's the right size, that kind of thing. And then even if you want to do it and your team wants to do it, sometimes it's like, well, I can't meet on Tuesdays because my classes are all on Wednesdays and whatever. Or, you know, when there's a structural problem, when the timetable doesn't work, or when somebody lives too far away, and then, you know, that makes it really, really hard. Or, you know, the rewards aren't there, so that there's no extra pay for people to do the specific thing that you want. Anyway, so that I found this table to be super helpful. So overall, getting something to work, I just like to show this because it was a cool picture about how these things could come together, this one pavilion. It takes time to develop the trust. And that's, you know, you just have to spend the time together. You have to find a way to understand what works for different individuals. And then if you can try to listen carefully, you can understand where everybody's coming from. So in other words, this successful collaboration requires complementary backgrounds and roles, and then a shared interest. And then you can gradually stage the technology adoption so that you know, you can start to understand those invisible impediments. So we're super worried about the students right at this moment because we're hitting midterms and it's coming right when everybody's getting so sick of being inside, and the COVID thing is just like, if you listen to the news more than like 5 minutes a day, you get depressed. And so we're trying to figure out how we can do those kind of community events like we're doing here with the Oregon Architects. And then, as I said, the team dynamics for each group can be different. I remember one studio where there were 4 young women. Every decision they did together, I thought I would die if I had to do that sort of thing, as opposed to, you know, there was another team where there were really different skills, a boss and some very junior people, and it worked like clockwork because that person who was supervising would reward anybody who could do anything and say, that is fantastic. And then he would fix it because it was done by a beginner. And it was like, whoa, that is a skilled supervisor. And so the key thing that you always have to remember is that you always have to make sure every member gets to shine. So that's my my overview. I hope I didn't take too much time. Here are 3 of us if you want to get in touch. And that's Maria Paulo, who's my teaching partner, who is infinitely patient, which is super great. So I'm going to stop share. Well, let me see if I can see the chat. Anyway, so I'd like to open it up and see if there's any questions for any of us, please. You can be brave and turn on your camera. I can't hear anything, Kurt.
So there are a few questions on the chat. I can read them, huh? If you want. So what Nathan asks, what advantages do you think exist within the digital remote learning workflow that are superior to the analog face-to-face studio environment? Conversely, have you identified any deal breakers in the digital remote workflow that is just untenable for studio education?
Thank you very much, Geraldine. So Geraldine pointed out that we can have our friends from around the world help our students, which is super great because I used to be on the East Coast and then I taught in Asia for a little while. The other thing that is great is that there's some people whose lives just don't fit how we teach studio. And it's like, I mean, we had a single mom commuting from Albany, and if she wasn't a super person, she would not be alive right now. I mean, really, she did incredible work, and she struggled like crazy to be able to do it. I mean, she had a high school student, so 2 high school kids, and they were okay. But I mean, we have a lot of students for whom the rigid format of our education is not good. We know it, and we're trying to figure out how to get around it. So if you can have some asynchronous education, that flexibility is fantastic. And the non-starters, deal breakers, we had to cancel a few classes. So we typically have this practicum program. Randy Nishimura just blogged about this. He's going to talk to Otto Paticio's, it's just a really small number of students. Instead of embedding students in the workplace, which we couldn't, he's doing interviews with people. And then the other thing was the hands-on, you know, furniture studio. Thank God we did not schedule one for spring, but Oregon Builds, Jerome has been going out to Cottage Grove and building these houses for veterans, these small cottages. And
Yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't continue this. Yeah, this term. That was very unfortunate. But I do have also. So I think that what I realized is in this format, students are kind of maybe even more focused, right? Because we have those reviews or kind of conversations over a drawing, and then you really your focus is on the drawing on the screen. So I think that I almost feel that okay, the conversations are shorter, but they're much more spot on for the better or worse. Because sometimes also the cool thing about an more informal conversation is that a lot of new ideas pop up, etc. But I think that there was something that was very interesting also. And Ryan, you feel free to chime in. I was trying to collect also some feedback from the students all like every week, and I think that architecture students somehow are not doing bad at all, because they're used to a lot of kind of doing the work on the screen. And I think that students that are more in, well, I'm looking at our within our college, but at planning schools or management, they're struggling a little more because they maybe they're more kind of verbal people, or they communicate in a different way. So I also realized that between if the studio has around 15 or 16 students, there are one or two that are really struggling with the online format. Most of the people are fine, but one or two really needs. I think the average, when I was serving a little bit the faculty, needed kind of a little bit of more attention. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about this yesterday, and I would agree. I think most students are excelling under this format just because the means by which we are sharing information now and sharing screens and sharing our designs is, I think it works better with the way we work, just like you're saying, Geraldine. I mean, sharing your Rhino screen is way more efficient than printing out this long piece of paper and being like, look at that. And just even if you like look at it, you can't even, you know. But I think the one deal breaker I could think of, I mean, aside from, well, the one deal breaker I really can think of is I think preventing burnout is tough, especially when you sit in front of your computer all day. I mean, it's different when you can pick up and leave studio and come back to your computer later. And I'm sure everyone feels that in the office too. But sitting on Zoom all day is just, yeah, that's universal. That's tough.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out a few more things. It's been shown that if you have students who are international students or who are shy, you can use the asynchronous discussion board and staging participation. So if I, for example, go through the participants list and say, hey, you, I'm trying to expand it so I can see, hey, Nathan, you pipe in, or Stan, it's your turn, then you can actually have a list and you can know I'm number 4, I have to talk now. It helps shy people to know there's a protocol. Otherwise, international students will never say anything. So if you can make sure that everybody's going to, as a requirement, put in a note in the online chat, then you make that a requirement, you can get fuller participation. I think one of the things that our teachers found was that there's a little bit of a formality of doing pinups on this concept board, whiteboard. They don't feel comfortable putting up something that's just a formative idea, and that's problematic for students who are just beginning. They need to put things that are ugly in order to get beautiful things. I'm
Nancy,
curious
that's
about
your
others, what other people have finding. I know it's almost 6, but go ahead.
This is Kurt. I was just going to say that your comment about using a concept board or some kind of a whiteboard as a way to engage international students who maybe have some discomfort with language was a similar comment that was made last week in the firm digital collaboration, just in terms of personalities and how some of us are very willing to speak up very quickly, and other people will take more time to deliberate. And so this is giving us some flexibility to allow more engagement. I think it's a wonderful way to think about this, and one of those lasting, one of these lasting things that are going to happen after social distancing becomes a term of the past, and as we collaborate.
I'm curious if anybody in the audience would pipe up with things they found useful or challenging during this time.
We'll unmute the mics. If you want to speak, just go ahead.
I'll give a quick shout out, really, to the presenters, Nancy, Ryan, and how do you say your name? Geraldine? Yeah, this is fantastic. Awesome job, guys. For me personally, I went right away, and I'm now one of your followers, Ryan. So
thanks.
It's just helpful for us or people like me to understand, you're out there to follow. So I will continue to do that. And then I took another look at the Timber Tech Tonics in Digital Age. Nancy, your blog. You call it a blog, but it looks more like a website because it's,
it's a website.
Really detailed. So definitely more to look at there than time permits at the moment. So anyway, for me, I really like the methodology and your approach to studio. So I appreciate your explaining that to me because I had no clue. So thanks.
And thanks. And I think that also coming from the professional background, there is a lot of similarity that I see now with almost like feeling, oh, you work with a team of or with junior architects, and how you literally red mark, or sometimes even in an office you don't always print out things, but as Ryan said, you just approach behind someone's back and see the screen, and then they show you the model and you can really kind of talk about the project. So the workflow really reminds me about the professional setting, the way we will present also through PowerPoint. So I think it will be, it's in a way a good kind of bringing people also up to speed in what is about to happen soon, right, when they get out of school. So yeah.
I've got a quick question. Are you guys seeing anybody building physical models in their homes and showing you the model on the camera as a prop, or is it more skewed towards digital design? I'm curious about if people are still making physical models.
So what I feel is the big challenge was not that they would not do it, but it was the access to materials. As all the shops closed, that was challenging. Otherwise, people who had materials or were able to get them, they were doing it. Yeah. I don't know if Nancy, you wanted to say something. Sorry.
We actually have been talking to the Duck Store about making a kit. So one of the teaching assistants is setting up a kit so that they can mail order. So if we get enough orders, we can get a big discount on the cardboard. And, we have first-year students. I mean, some students just left their stuff in Eugene and went home to California or the mountains or someplace, and they don't even have their stuff. So she also researched what basic tools are available. Yeah, so it's a little crazy. And then, a few people have had relatives with COVID. A few people, have bad internet because they're in a small house with many people who need to share. And I think the hardest thing is for the teachers who have kids at home and they're trying to homeschool and get something done. I think it's really hard right now for them, that whole adjustment where they used to be able to just say work is here, home is there. And the boundaries are just, I mean, I just have to take a walk. We take a walk. We try to get out before the sun goes down every day, just so that I guess a break.
Yeah, I do the same. And if I can just jump into regarding the physical models, if you have 2 minutes of patience, I can share my screen and show what also students are doing and we are working with. So basically, with Zoom, you can share the screen on your iPhone and basically use it as a mobile camera, right? So basically, it's taking a second, but now I'm able. Oh, come on. Let's see, screen mirroring.
No, I was really happy. Jim Tice was scheduled to teach watercolor class, and we're like, do we have to cancel watercolor? And he said, the document camera is working way better than the demos he would do in real life. And I was like, whoa. And he said, I'm going to use the document camera in the future when I teach this face to face. And I was like, go, Jim. That's so great. You know, I was happy about that.
Oh, it's not letting me, but in this second. But basically, we are able to share the screen through our phones, and then use the phone as a camera to rotate the physical models, etc. So I mean, technology is really very handy now.
Oh, hi, Geraldine. This is Leanne Hensley. The presentation was wonderful. I love hearing about all the different methods of studio methodology. I taught design in Sri Lanka, and something I always really loved exploring with my students is the cross collaboration between digital platforms and fine arts approaches. So I'm just kind of curious about what nifty and neat design processes that you're seeing your students collaborate with. Like if you're printing out a 3D section and then you're watercoloring it up and then you scan that in and then you overlay that, and you know what I'm saying? Like those are the kind of processes that I find really neat regarding studio collaborations and digital methods. So I didn't really hear anything about that. And I think that that's a really important thing when teaching. To not lose sight of, because first and foremost, as architectural design professionals, engineers, we're fine artists, we're creative problem solvers. It comes back from that tactile thing. So I'd love to hear about that in the future from you, Bo, and also just to hear about that process from other professionals, because that's what makes work art.
Yeah, Leanne, I totally agree with you, and I think that you touched a topic that somehow we missed in this digital format. The connection with the hand, or the action of brain and the hand is suffering, and that also creates some confusions in scale, right? Because in digital format you can endlessly zoom in and endlessly zoom out without understanding the scale and the level of details, etc. I do teach a media course that works with combined media. So basically what you said, watercoloring, scanning, and it's working well. Nevertheless, what we realized also is with the studio, we were trying to say, oh, you can still use sketching and drawing, but the problem was that many students don't have a printer. So they cannot print out bases at scale and use them as a base to sketch over. So that is something I never thought about. And I thought, oh yeah, sure, we can use that. You can build models, but how do you build models if you don't have a printer, right? So that was a big kind of, we were a little bit butting heads with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the feedback.
No, it's great, Leanne. I think you have the right idea to try to use all your creative powers. And if they're stimulated by using things like clay or paint, that's really, really helpful.
Oh, no, I know I'm a realist. I know that you're not, that's like a niche thing at the end of your project. Once you've already done all the modeling and all the rest of the stuff, you might throw in something by hand to wow your teacher. And so I'm just thinking back to when I've taught and the different methods that go between, departments.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I think, one of the other courses that had to be canceled was the urban farm. There's like 60 people, 90 people who sign up for that every quarter, especially in the springtime. And it's just like, trying to find a way to substitute that. The landscape architecture head, Roxy Thorin, said, well, we're thinking they'll do some prototyping and 3D print them, but they're not sure, some sort of park insertions, but it is a challenge, to get that without the feedback.
We're at 6:07, and I think the comment about getting out before and walking around before it gets dark sounds like a great idea. At least in Eugene, the sun is out, the rain has stopped, and so I think we ought to wrap up here. I want to reiterate Rex's comments. This is a wonderful presentation. I very much appreciate it. I think we should try and schedule something closer to the end of the term, and kind of maybe Jim was talking about the AI Oregon Presents series, where a few firms are going to be presenting some of their work. I think it would be wonderful when we get near the end of the term to fit in a studio presentation for how this term worked out. And so let's talk about that and see how we can do that. I think it'd be wonderful. Just our last event we have this week is Friday at 4 o'clock. We do a virtual happy hour. If you go to the AI Oregon website and events, you can sign up for that, and then we can continue this conversation. I think it's a wonderful conversation. I very much appreciate Geraldine, Ryan, and Nancy, your participation today, and look forward to talking to you more. So,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank
Super
you.
fun.
Thanks,
Great to
everyone.
see you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
That was
Nice
fun.
talking to everybody.
See you
Bye.
later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Adrian, I'm gonna, you'll stop the recording and figure out where to save that?
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Have you done that before?
No, not on Zoom. On GoToMeeting, yeah.
Try the cloud option, and because yesterday's I did the hard drive.